Welcome back to Brothers in Boots. My name is Mike.
My name is Jeff.
And today we will be tackling boot myths. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Questions, ideas, suggestions, thoughts. Fuck you, Mike. All valid. What are we drinking today, Jeff? That looks like a Four Roses limited bottle.
It is a Four Roses limited. This is the 2014. Yeah, 2014. Got some 12-year OESV. Always a good pour.
Yep, I'm a big fan. I have the 23 and the 24. So, and I've had the 22, the 21, and the 19. I missed the 2020. But Four Roses is fucking underrated. I'm just going to say it.
Hard one to find.
Tis.
A little bit surprised that it doesn't go for more. It's one of those things with, if you have the money to play in the secondary, it's affordable and easy to get for what it is.
Yeah, it's getting up there. I think the average one goes around like $650 secondary, and its MSRP 24 was $220 in Kansas, so I think around $180 to $220 is most people's MSRP for this one.
Seen some as low as $450.
Oh wow,
$400. Yeah.
So
good stuff.
It is one of my favorites. Alrighty, so boot myths. These are going to be marketing jargon. These are going to be just things that people have thought have been said before on the internet and other YouTube videos, and just all kinds of stuff. And it's just a good, nice, wholesome setting the record straight on a lot of different stuff. A lot of this is going to be stuff you've heard on our channel before. Some of this is going to be not new. It's not going to be groundbreaking. We have covered it, but it's a nice, fun, in one place, not had to go search for 4 different videos to find a lot of this information. So
all together.
Yeah. Yep. So first, boot myth: Goodyear welt and what it really is. This answer is simple. It is a machine-lasted, machine-welted construction that's done for speed of manufacturing. That's the answer.
Yeah, I wish I could explain or understand the exact reason, but people hear Goodyear welted and they're impressed. I don't know why they're impressed, but it's just a term that impresses a lot of newbies, and they get excited about, and they think it's a gold standard that they should seek. And anything that's not Goodyear welted, they, I guess, look down on it without understanding why they shouldn't.
100%. Because it's really, in gold standard, the 2 big things that everyone really holds it to is durability is number 1, and number 2 is easy to repair. So we'll start with durability, but once again, compared to your standard flat welt, it's a speed construction. It was literally invented to speed up lasting and hand welting, and generally flat welt. There are some machines that do Norwegian, but it was to basically speed up hand welting during World War II. It was used before World War II, but that's when it was really, really heavily got used. And when we talk about it in terms of durability, yeah, compared to cemented shit you buy at Walmart, sure, it's more durable. But in properly built footwear, it's a speed process, which is a money game at the end of the day. It's reducing labor time, curing time, man hours, so on and so forth. And key,
helps the manufacturer, does not help the customer.
Exactly. And the key thing there is even if there, you automated a ton of the parts of the process, the part that matters the most here isn't actually the machine welted. The real issue is machine lasted. Why is that a problem? Simple. Machines have tolerances. The manufacturers have to adjust the machine for how hard it stretches, pulls, and where it pulls at for every leather that goes through. And if you got the first couple boots that they're still making adjustments on, and they didn't label them as seconds, you got seconds at full price.
Well, and leather is a natural item. It's not manufactured, so it's not always even in the same. So you get a bad spot, the laster might need to pull it a little bit harder or not quite as hard in order to properly last that leather for each section of it, since they're always different. And a machine isn't going to be able to do that. It's going to apply the same pressure to every area every time.
Yep, and second it tears, the manufacturer is going to lean on the side of caution. They're going to loosen it up there. And who knows, maybe there was like 5 bad hides at the start that someone didn't catch. So now everything of that run gets lasted a little too loose because the first couple hides had soft spots that stretched more and tore. So they like loosened the machine up. When you hear about the Goodyear welted manufacturers that won't use leather heel counters, Kevin from Caswell talked about this a bunch. A huge portion of why a lot of those manufacturers won't use the leather heel counters is because they don't want to readjust their machines for the people who were doing celastic, styrene, the number of the thermoplastics that are used to a leather one is literally labor hours. It's man hours. You know, you have a machine down probably 2 hours adjusting for the leather heel counter, and then another 2 hours adjusting to go back to a thermoplastic. That's like 80 pairs of shoes not made. You know, a lot of them don't want to deal with it. And that doesn't count the trial and error of getting it to work and having the heel counter look right and everything. So, but the machine lasting part is a huge component. It's really the most important part, is someone's not hand lasting the boots and or shoes. And think about it this way too. Say you have like custom stuff added to the last. It becomes even more important for it to be hand pulled when it's not as uniform and as symmetrical as the last. If they've added something in for a bunion, or, you know, for example, what if you're doing a pair of mismates? Usually they adjust for the sizes too. You can't use all the same settings for a size 14 that you use for a size 6. There's adjustments that happen through this, and they've got a lot of it pre-documented so that they have an idea, but it's still something that happens.
Goodyear welt is also more pieces. Whenever you've got more pieces, you've got more chance of something failing or not going together quite as well. You've got the cork that you're always going to have to use, and some people like the cork, and it is good for a quick break-in. I personally hate the cork, and I feel like it just has way too high of a chance of bunching up, even if it's a actual sheet. It's not something I want to chance, but these are things that have to be when you're making a Goodyear welted boot.
Yep. Well, and Jeff touched on it, but a big thing here is more parts means compounding errors. And that's a real dangerous reality. Any of you that have done anything with machining, manufacturing, car enthusiasts, gun enthusiasts, you know, compounding errors add up fast. At one side of the car, it's a 16th inch. The other side of the car, it's like 3 to 4 inches. No bueno. Only Teslas are allowed to have 3 to 4 inch gaps. Didn't you know?
You know, the gemming is one of those extra pieces. And
yep.
Mink is a fabric, and fabric is going to break down faster than leather. So, you know, you're eventually going to have an issue.
Yeah, very few companies sew it in too. Like your cobblers will sew it in because they don't want that stuff coming back. But most companies just glue it. So not only is it a piece of fabric, it's a glued in piece of fabric. So, and then, you know, we talked about it a little bit, you know, easier to repair. For a resole, sure, compared to some of the others, it is easier to repair. But it's not for the reasons that you would expect. For a cobbler, it's a little easier to repair because it's pulled away from the actual feather line quite a bit more. So the edge of the upper, where it meets the well, is the feather line. Because it's pulled farther away from the feather line, it's a lot easier to do on their machines. If we're talking, you know, something that's more Blake Rapid, something that's Pacific Northwest stitch down, those stitches get significantly closer to the uppers than they would otherwise, which is easy to do on a brand new boot because the leather's stiff. On just a standard resole where it's collapsed down, it's out to the sides, you need some finger strength to keep that leather out of the way to not get it ran on by the machine or have the machine just gouge the shit out of the vamp. that's a problem that is a little bit harder to deal with than people think. So it gives you the ease of being able to follow the holes in re-welting something that you probably couldn't re-welt that you'd need a last for, until those holes get so wallered out that they don't really come back quite to the same shape no more, because the upper will happen. If you send a lot of these Goodyear welted boots back to the manufacturer, they just punch new holes in the upper. They don't even bother hitting the old holes. They'll eventually turn that shit into Swiss cheese. So
and if you do a new welt instead of reusing the old welt as the cobbler, and then you've got the matter of matching up with holes on something that is stretched out a little bit versus something that's brand new, and matching up those holes and how hard it is to get through. So that's issues for the cobbler as well.
Yep. It's a little easier to repair than something that would need a last, but once the hole's wallered out enough, they're taking some very creative guessing into how they're lining it up, and they'll run some strings through it to hold it in place so that they can get the welting in. But keep in mind, that's as the holes get bigger, as the upper moves, it's only going to be so accurate to the original size. And if it was a tight fit, it's probably going to be a tighter fit. But compared to something like stitch down or like the Pacific Northwest styles, once they cut through the McKay lock stitch, if it has a McKay lock stitch, you're going to have a problem. And that is, once the McKay lock stitch is cut, if none of that glue is holding, you've lost the shape. And now they're really just trying to match up holes and praying. So it gives the perception of, it's easier for you to take it to any random person to repair. In certain circumstances, sure. But it's also just because they see that construction the most, because it's one of the quickest. I've seen this one a couple of times. There's zero truth to it, so we're going to talk about it. That somehow Goodyear welting is more waterproof. Compared to a Norwegian L-welt, sure. That's about the only one. Most of your cemented boots are going to be more waterproof until the glue breaks down than Goodyear welted is. I don't even know where this one came from. I've seen YouTube videos that talk about it. I've seen those same YouTubers correct it 2 years later. I don't know where this idea came from, but there's nothing even remotely waterproof about Goodyear welt.
Well, I mean, a storm welt still can be a Goodyear welt, and a storm welt helps. But again, it's not as waterproof. You've got your stitches are more exposed.
There's a path to the stitches, quite frankly.
Right.
I mean, you're better off with a stitch down or just a cemented boot at that point. I'm not a fan of telling people to go get cemented boots, but guess what? In something, if you can't afford a proper over molded boot, which is a boot that goes over the top of your regular boots. They make a lot of different styles. Call it to Baker's Boots. They'll help you get what you need, but overmolded boots are pretty expensive. They'll run you like $140, $160 on top of your expensive boots. But that is the correct way to get a true waterproof option. But cemented is a good in-between if you need something waterproof. It's not going to stay waterproof forever. Like, the glue will eventually break down and stuff will get in, but it's better than anything that has holes punched into it, including upper holes. It's way easier for a Gore-Tex liner to stay in place if it doesn't have stitches going through it. That's why a lot of these P&Ws don't like touching Gore-Tex liners, because eventually at some point to keep it in place, it's got to be poked with a sewing machine, which just fucks the Gore-Tex liner up and makes it real easy to tear.
Nothing's waterproof forever.
Except for a single piece, single molded galosh.
Except rubber.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the last one, which is we talked about in the beginning, Goodyear welt, gold standard. It's the best construction. No. It's the cheapest quality construction. That is it. So it's just the gold standard.
It's so weird because these sellers, I don't know, they should be like ashamed of it being Goodyear welted. They should be downplaying that it's Goodyear welted. They should be finding some way to explain for what is clearly not as good. But instead, they've taken the exact opposite route and said, let's just act like it's good and let's just put it right out there front and center and hope that people are stupid enough to buy into it and think it's good. And you know what? It worked.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happened. And that's why we're talking about it. That's why the myth is out there. People have bought into it and decided that if they're proud of it and they showcase it, then it's got to be a great construction.
Yeah, they've glorified it because they've acted like cemented is your only other option when it's just not. Even within a lot of these same brands. A lot of these same brands have options besides Goodyear welted that you could do. Let's take a good example of our friends over at White's. They have Goodyear welted options. Basically the entire Danner line that's owned by them is Goodyear welted. They have White's boots that fall under the Goodyear welted option under, what's the name of that?
Hawthorne, but that's gone.
Yeah.
It's now under White's.
Yep. Yeah, they were called Hawthorne for the longest time. That was their Goodyear welted line. And then they do regular machine stitch down with McKay and Norwegian roll welt. But with them, there was never any illusion that the Goodyear welt was the budget line. So, yeah, the glorifying of Goodyear welt, I still do not 100% get it. But they've 60s, 70s, and 80s, man, did the marketing teams work hard to make that a reality. Real hard. But yeah, that is what Goodyear welt really is. It is the gold standard of fast, reliable construction at a cheapest possible price. And for everyone that's saying like, oh, but Goodyear welt boots are just as expensive as well, that just means there's bigger profit margins. In manufacturing, speed and labor are a product of price. So the faster that you can make it for the least amount of labor means the price goes down. The rest is all profit margin from that point. Alrighty, so that is the myth of Goodyear welt and what it really is. Myth number 2. This is another one that I don't understand at all, but we'll get deep into this one. And that is that Blake Rapid Stitch is a cheap, easier construction than Goodyear welting, and that you should look for Goodyear welted boots over Blake Rapid Stitch boots. Yeah. This is an interesting one. So to blow everyone's mind just a little bit here, and think about it from a different perspective. This is a stitch down P&W boot with a McKay stitch, also known as a Blake stitch, right? If this upper was tucked under when the McKay stitch was done instead of flanged out, this boot would literally be Blake Rapid. The toughest work boots in the world are literally a Blake Rapid stitch with a flange out for stitch down construction versus tucking the upper under. I still do not understand where this is perpetuated from. It has been repeated even recently in a number of circles. Stitch Down just did an episode with Joss Wooten from Australia, fantastic bootmaker from Australia, talking about like the misconceptions of this exact thing and how there are people who honestly believe that Blake Rapid is a cheap, easy workaround to avoid using Goodyear welting or buying Goodyear welting machines. Crazy.
I mean, it's literally a hidden stitch versus a visible stitch.
No.
It's if it's not exposed, the better stitch.
Yeah. The other thing too is when it comes with Blake Rapid, you know, the majority of Blake Rapid has to be done with hand lasting. You're getting around the machine lasting stage because guess what? To do the McKay Blake portion, you've got to pull the last out, which means the boot's got to be constructed and cured enough to do that. Meaning you can't just, oh man, throw it in the machine, stretches the leather over it, pulls it, stitches it, bam, pull the last out, we're good to go. It's got that shape. No, there's curing time, there's molding time. Like you take the last down, the boot falls apart. What are you gonna McKay stitch? The insole to the outsole or to the midsole by itself? Who needs an upper? This is the Birkenstock special, the leather Birkenstock. Yeah, it's more durable in pretty much every way, and it adds durability in a ton of different setups on top of it. Because, like I said, the Blake Rapid does not necessarily have to be a Blake stitch to a what looks like a faux Goodyear welt or a flat welt. You could literally flare the upper out for stitch down. You could add a Norwegian L welt to combo these two constructions together to make the Norwegian L welt more durable. You could go even crazier and you could do a McKay and add in a Norwegian roll welt if you wanted to. That construction is possible. I don't know why you'd do it. You're making some of the steps significantly harder for no reason, but you could do it if you wanted to. And like I said, just like in the last piece, this myth, the reason we did Goodyear welted first instead of starting with this one, though I think this is the more interesting one of the episode, is it's important to understand that this goes off the idea that the Goodyear welt is the gold standard, and this is a knockoff Goodyear welt, whatever the fuck that means.
Reverse it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been a ton of weird myths perpetuated off this too. Like, so we've talked about, how this is basically similar to the PNWs. Why do the PNWs flare the upper out? Simple. Waterproofness. No path to stitches. That is literally the main purpose in flaring it out, is literally to make it more waterproof. It's also why we know that Norwegian roll welt isn't the traditional method of making P&W boots. Because why did regular stitch down become more common than the regular traditional, which is nail down? Simple. Nails add holes. Once the glue layers break down, path right in, right? So this was the you could just think about it from that perspective of a nail down construction versus stitch down. You can see where stitch down McKay is literally fixing the two biggest problems with nail down. It just makes it slightly slower. Which has perpetuated this kind of myth that because it's a Blake stitch style construction, just like Blake stitch, you need the last to repair it. No, you don't. The McKay stitch holds it in place. The biggest problem most cobblers have with repairing a Rapid Blake or a P&W stitch down is how close the machine has to get to the uppers to punch the stitches directly down. A lot of them can't or don't want to adjust their machines to stitch that close and risk damaging the upper in doing it. Because it's already a pray and send it methodology with a Goodyear welt, knowing they could have to literally re-welt it if it screws up. Now you don't have an option of re-welting. If you send and pray and it does bad, it's bad. You're not hiding them holes no more. But no, it's not like... The whole point of Blake Rapid is to make a more durable and easier to repair version of Blake, adding in extra intricacies to build on that construction, but keep that tightness around the last that you don't get with Goodyear welting. Literally the point of construction. Oh, that cap's lost. Find it later. Sorry, you're saying something?
No, I was trying to decide or think whether there's anything to add to that before we moved on. I think that covered it all.
Yep. The next one. This is going to be a little bit of a controversial one because a lot of people are going to think it's a little bit of a hot take, but there's some reality here. The myth is cemented boots are all trash. I'm here to tell you, unfortunately, no, that's not the case. Cemented boots have their place. As much as I would love cemented boots to just disappear off the face of the planet because manufacturers abuse them, they have a spot in the boot world.
I mean, this glue is seriously good at this point. I mean, we've gotten to the point where they have really figured out how to dial in this glue for the purpose. And yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, it does a great job.
Yeah.
It does a great job and doesn't expose anything, and you've got no holes. You know, most of these boots that we see where we're proud of the construction, they went ahead and they threw in glue anyway.
Yeah. And most
Just
of
to
them will
help it
tell
out.
you the stitches are there for backup of the glue, not vice versa. So why would someone choose a pair of cemented boots? Simple. Flexibility, waterproofness. If you can't afford an overboot, you don't necessarily want to wear a galosh, cemented boots are a great option for waterproofness. They don't tear Gore-Tex liners. There's no holes in it. They don't need extra tape in various spots to try to keep it all in place because layers flex independently. In a cemented boot, everything flexes as a unit. And quite simply, for someone that's standing like in ankle deep water every day that doesn't wear galoshes, or let me go a little crazier. Say you're a farrier or a cow hoof trimmer where you're standing in tons of manure and slurry and the animals are peeing on you the whole time. If you're not wearing galoshes, a cemented boot would make way more sense, especially a cemented vulcanized rubber boot would make way more sense than a leather stitched boot. Also quite a bit more flexible for situations where flexibility is necessary. Another big part of this of cemented boots are trash is because, well, once they start to fall apart, you just throw them in the trash and they're done and you get another pair. Not entirely true. Cemented boots are repairable. Lots of cobblers repair shit like UBs all the time.
Even if it's just shoe goo. I mean, you know, I've repaired shoes that way, and the repairs have lasted for quite a while in the past.
Yeah, your average cobbler probably repairs more cemented construction than they do the quality stuff. I mean, you think about like Goodyear welt and like, oh, I need holes to line it up to. Well, guess what you have with cemented shoes? A whole glue line of where it tore away to know exactly where to re-put the glue back on. Very, very similar concept. No different than just reusing the holes for re-welting a Goodyear welted boot. Yeah, we mentioned it before, but, you know, one of the best choices, waterproof builds. No holes. No seams to break apart that aren't well worn. You know, overall... I didn't think about this earlier. I forgot about it, but fucking say you're a car washer. Car washer is another great example of where a cemented boot makes way more sense. Say you run a car detailing business and you run a power washer on a regular basis, or you power wash driveways. This is another area cemented boot makes way, way, way more sense.
And vulcanized is another good one for that area. Not that there's any myths associated with it.
Yeah, that one's a little more understood, luckily. Unless they're Doc Martens. Because then they take the best parts of vulcanization and just punch some holes in the upper, because fuck it, why not?
Oh, they're fake. They are.
Yeah.
They
yeah,
are.
yeah, these days they are, yeah. So, but yeah, this is a strange one too, because cemented boots are an oddly decisive topic in the fact that a lot of, you know, people dog hard on cemented boots, but there's real legitimate purposes for them. I didn't think about this till a minute ago, but you know, we mentioned Uggs aloud. Weather insulated boots are another good example of a reason someone might go with a cemented construction. It's a little bit cheaper, a little bit more flexible. Maybe they don't want a dedicated pair of, you know, P&W boots with insulation. I mean, you can get them.
Right.
But, I mean, you know, for a lot of people, having a pair of boots that are only used during 40 inches of snow a year is not necessarily what they're looking for. You know, another thought to think about. That being said, you know, it's the same concept with shearling jackets. Lots of people like shearling jackets, especially the bomber style ones. But they're definitely one of those weird leather jackets that you can only wear in certain situations, and like you're only gonna get what 25 to 50 days of wear a year probably in it. Do you want a custom $2,000 shearling bomber jacket? For some people, the answer is absolutely, because they love World War II. But if you're not one of those people, chances are your answer is probably no. Or you're looking for a more reasonable alternative. Alrighty. Myth number 4. Veg tan versus chrome tan. And that veg tan is the ultimate have-all, be-all, do-all leather, and everyone should only ever use veg tan from now until the end of time.
Depends.
Yep. The answer is, for certain things, sure, but the reality is no. Great example, that's the tongue. I have veg tan tongues. Fucking sucks. It is not the place for veg tan.
Well, for a lot of these, Goodyear welted being an exception, but for a lot of these, the reason why people think that something is good or something is bad has to do with how long it takes, how much time needs to be invested in order to do it. And this one follows it as well. Veg tanning takes, an average veg tan takes about a month. Average chrome tan takes about 6 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually the most veg tans are closer to 6 weeks, but yeah. I mean, you even take Chrome XL. Chrome XL is like 4 hours of chrome tanning, and it's chrome tanned before it even gets to Horween. And then from there, it goes through 6 weeks of veg tanning. You know, the average Wicket and Craig is 6 to 8 weeks, ignoring things like Shell Cordovan that are multiple months. But I mean, yeah, I mean, you're looking, 6 weeks, I think is pretty standard for a lot of veg tans versus, the average chrome tan can be done start to finish, hot stuff, emulsified, whatever, in 3 to 4 days.
But that does not make it better, necessarily.
Yeah.
Which, and this is amongst people who actually even know some stuff. The rest of the people, there's probably a scary amount of people that think of veg tan as vegetarian and something that's not using leather. I would hope that nobody in these watching these videos would be that dumb or naive, but there's certainly quite a few people out there who are.
Yeah. Now
they are not vegan.
Yes, it's not vegan leather.
Far from vegan.
Yeah, it is definitely more eco-friendly to veg tan over chrome tan, and there are certain things you don't want chromium salts touching, but yeah, we'll go into that a little bit. What is chrome tan better at? Answer is some things. Specific malleable pieces are always going to be better chrome tanned. Anything you need better weather chemical resistance, chrome tan's going to get a big bonus on. Extra points for being an oil retan. Anything that is in the leather that keeps more things from wanting to get into that leather is a good thing when it comes to water and chemical resistance. Right? It's way easier to keep your socks from getting ruined in the lake if they're already wet than if they're completely dry. I love examples. Yeah. Metaphors are fun.
The work leathers aren't just cheaper. The work leathers are better for the purpose of work.
Yep. Now don't get us wrong. Why do so many people choose Seidel? It's a price versus performance. Like, there are other chrome tanned options besides Seidel. Seidel just comes in that they get the sides at a good price. It's got the level of durability they want. And it's also cheap enough that no one's going to feel bad if, the chainsaw hits it.
And it's quality hides.
Yeah. I mean, if the chainsaw hits your Merriam, you're going to have a couple tears. let's just be honest. Your horse rump is a lot harder to replace and was significantly more expensive than that Seidel side. There's going to be some tears. But the work leathers aren't quite like that. Like I said, the fact that they're all oil tanned except for tan Teton. Tan Teton's got a pigment finish. It's still oil tanned, but the top layer is not the same as the others. you get it. And even then, let's take Seidel. Seidel's a really good example. At a 9-ounce leather, it is way more flexible and movable as an oil tanned chrome tan product than a 9-ounce veg tan. Like, while Seidel is stiff and takes break-in, and most people wouldn't consider it an easy break-in leather, we'll give you a 9-ounce veg tan and tell me how you really feel about it. Ask Jeff how his 9.5-ounce zucchini is. I actually have a pair of those too. Like, how the break-in is on that 9.5-ounce zucchini. Fucking Seidel is like Chrome XL level walk in the park in comparison.
Took quite a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but their tongue is a great spot for chrome tan leather that makes sense. Another spot that makes a lot of sense for a chrome tan leather is the sock liner. Ironically, for most people, it's the part of the boot that gets the most wet. Another good example.
Yeah.
Now, what is veg tan good for? Well, veg tan has three major components to it, but the two that matter the most really is, number one, chromium salts can't touch everything. Anything like a knife sheath, a gun holster, a pocket protector holder thing for like a pen, a watch, a calculator, anything that touches any kind of precious metal or high carbon metals, you do not want the chromium salts touching. They will rust it, quite simply. It's part of the reason that a lot of the nails are even in like a boot, like a Pacific Northwest stitch down boot that has nails that are left in. A ton of the reason a lot of these nails are pulled out is because the chromium salts rust the nails. So if you've ever looked at the inside of your P&W boots, you'll see that it'll leave stains, like these black oxidation stains in the leather, in the oak bark leather. It is actually even worse on those nails, and they degrade faster if there was a chrome tan layer in there that it's making contact with. And part of the reason a lot of those nails are starting to rust, or they look a little rusty, is because they were there for the lasting process, and they most likely went through a chrome tan leather and deposited those chromium salts, which is that oxidation, in that very little time that it had lasting nails in it. Because obviously where those stains are at, or near your toes, there's no nails left there. Well, there shouldn't be nails left there. If there's nails left there, you need to contact your manufacturer, because they should be. But that's all just that oxidation from those metal nails touching those chrome tan leathers. The other thing is molding. Molding is a valuable asset of veg tans. They mold to your feet quick. I mean, well, hell, I could talk to you about how they mold to your feet and ankles, but look, your insoles are made with veg tan to mold to your bottom of your foot. It's the best example you could have right there. They mold more.
Yep.
They take the shape better. They mold quicker. They have a better memory to them. We talked about it in some section. We talked about where, a lot of these, I think it's when we talked about squeaks, where these were made for saddles, which are literally meant to mold to the back of the horse in your ass. So yeah, this is a valuable asset to it. And the third thing, which is important but not functional, is you do get a pretty fucking cool patina out of veg tan that you don't get out of chrome tans. It looks natural. It ages better. They're a little bit more maintenance, but overall,
it doesn't come quickest, but overall, in the end, looks really cool.
Yep. And like I said, it's just a more natural product. There are like allergies and stuff to consider. We've heard of the bootmakers having to source non-chromium salt tongues for people that have chromium salt allergies. It is a thing that exists. Because a lot of the companies will use a chrome tan liner too if it needs a liner, so they'll have to source a very flexible veg tan liner, and as flexible as you're going to find a veg tan tongue, and the person's just going to have to suffer a little bit. But it is what it is. There's allergies that do exist. People do have issues with the chromium salts. It is a known thing. And, you know, it's a benefit. You know, there are negatives to veg tan. Talked about in our last video. Veg tan squeaks during break-in. Veg tan stiffer. When we talk ounce for ounce, it doesn't have as easy for break-in. It's way less weather resistance. While it might be a little more puncture resistant, it's less abrasive resistance. So, you know, and let's be honest, most of us aren't dealing with punctures from the top sides of our boots. Usually deal with punctures from the bottom side of the boot.
So it depends on the situation for which is the better use.
Yep. So.
Yep. Another example, I was done, right?
Yeah.
Anything else to add there?
Maybe one thing, we mentioned it earlier, but this is another thing where people equate time to value. This is one of the few that doesn't hold entirely that example. Just because veg tan it takes longer doesn't make it the better product. Whereas a lot of the other stuff we've mentioned, the product that takes longer generally is better. This is the exception to that rule.
Another myth, and this is actually on the fly. I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner, either one of us, but that horse is definitely always better than cow. Bovine leather. The myth is there again is because of price. Usually, a lot of this has been the amount of time involved for cost, but this is a cost of materials. Horse used to be cheap because there was plenty of it.
Yeah,
and it was I mean, you had lots of horses that were doing work. They're doing manual labor, where we've got a lot more machines doing it nowadays. And you had plenty of horses, and you can't make glue out of all of them. And so you had lots of hides, and they're big animals. So horse leather was used for a lot of work boots. But, you know, now it wasn't a matter of what was best. It was a matter of this isn't being used anywhere else, and this is otherwise going to be thrown away. Does have its strengths. It is good for a lot of stuff, but nowadays we see horses being better, and I think in a fair amount of situations that price tag is because of how rare it is now, because of the amount of machines that we have doing the work, that there isn't as much horse leather available out there, which makes it cost more money. And when it costs more money, well, obviously it must be better, right?
Yeah.
But no. Not necessarily better. It is better in certain ways, but there is a myth associated with why it's better.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head, the two specific things. It's more expensive, and people think it's retro. It was like, oh, they used it in the 30s and 40s. It's got to be better than cow, right? No, it's just more available in the 30s and 40s. In the case of horse, where does horse fall short of cow? It's generally a little bit more abrasive resistance than cow, but it's not as puncture resistant. It tends to be a little thinner, unless it's horse rump specifically. Most the time, pound for pound, the horse hide is 2 to 3 ounces thinner than cowhide. That cowhide, steer hide, different story. So you've got that problem going on, and in general, horse is more maintenance than cow. Horse needs condition more than cow. Horse is more likely to absorb whatever shit you step in than cow is. And you don't see very many horse oil tan vintages because it just kind of causes the hides to stretch and crease and blow out in nasty ways. There are some people that do it, but it's nowhere near as common as it is in cowhide. Especially like the oil tan double shoulder stuff from like Italy that, you know, it really, really has some strength and temper to it.
It's a quick one, but certainly part of a myth.
Oh yeah. Now, you know what? Going on the horse thing, I'll call this one out because this is a big one. This has come up in the Handwelt Deluxe a couple times, but shell cordovan's not really good for boots. It's another horse product that just because it's rare doesn't mean it's there. It's a odd piece of footwear to wear when it comes to shell cordovan. It's a cool flex. It's got a unique patina and look to it, and like how it rolls and distresses. It's unique because shell cordovan generally lightens in color versus darkening in color like most leathers do. If you've ever seen someone's color 8 Horween that's a very dark purple, almost black, 10 years later, it's a bright ruby red.
Yep.
So you lose a lot of color in shell, but it's not great for footwear. Really.
It's good for a dress shoe, but it's not really so good for a boot if you're wearing your boot like a dress shoe. A lot of it is cost. A lot of it is how much it costs to make. A lot of it is how little an area of that is of the horse. I mean, it's really only from the center of the butt cheeks. So
yeah,
the little pieces at the very center of the butt cheek. That's a small amount, and then there's quite a bit of labor involved in smoothing it out, and a lot of time involved in the tanning. So there's a lot of reasons for why it costs a lot of money, but as far as being better, in use,
it's as useful as Prosaurus croc is. So Prosaurus croc is the real most expensive leather in the world. I know a lot of people have always said it's shell cordovan. It's Prosaurus croc, saltwater crocodile. It's like almost 3 times the cost per square foot of shell cordovan. And you go look at your like Gaziano and Girlings, your George Cleverleys, your Dominic Casey's, your big, or even at U.S. bespoke makers like your Francis Walpinger. You know, they do a lot of boots and shoes out of Prosaurus croc because it's really like the rich man's, like it's the most expensive leather available. The only leather more expensive is leather with specific stories, like the 1776 reindeer that is quite a bit more expensive than Prosaurus croc. Not the replicated stuff, like the actual stuff that was pulled out of the shipwreck. So, yeah.
And last,
but not least,
McKay lock stitch is an unnecessary extra step, and it can be felt underfoot. This one has been made popular recently, but neither statement is true, or at least they're not true if done properly. The McKay lock stitch is arguably not so important for a casual boot or a boot worn in an office. We talked about how strong glue is, and it is, and glue can take care of it and hold things together, or a lightly worn boot. If you got a work boot, you're really putting it through its paces, and you're working it outdoors, and you're really a hard tasker on your boots. That McKay lock stitch is important. You need to make sure that inside is held together, and the McKay lock stitch establishes it without any exposed threads, any exposed holes. Make sure everything stays together as it should. It is important.
Yep.
So if you're working your boots outside, you need to make sure that whoever you're buying your boots from is doing that stitch.
Absolutely. We talked about it in the most recent video on squeaks. We talk about the white squeak, the dreaded white squeak. That one of that's caused by the lack of squeak pad, but the other thing is that's much more common in their Norwegian rolled welt pieces. Well, why is that more common in that? Because there's no McKay lock stitch in there, as it's not necessary in a Norwegian rolled welt, but it's an extra layer where shit can separate and cause air gaps. Air gaps always lead to squeaks. They'll start as whistles, they'll become squeaks. Doesn't matter what the footwear is. Good, could be Goodyear welt, could be Blake stitch, doesn't matter. If there's an air gap, you're going to start getting squeaks eventually. And that McKay lock stitch covers up a very important air gap. Or potential for an air gap, I should say.
Indeed. And then the other one is the second part of that was that you can feel it underfoot. And if you can feel it underfoot, whoever made your boots didn't know how to use the machine, didn't know how to make your boots. You can't say that it's not good because your people don't know how to fucking use the machines right and do their work, do their job, make the boot. And instead of doing a better job and doing it right, learning how to use the machine, they have made them so that the stitches are not stitched down correctly and can be felt, unfortunately. But that's not the fault of the construction. It's not the fault of the step. It's the fault of the person who made the boots.
Yeah. If your tension's right and you got the horn angled in the right direction, it won't be under your toes. It'll be just barely on the inside of the boot, just right before the upper curves out to be a stitch down. And it should literally be right in that line. It's literally just to the inside of the feather line.
It's cutting a corner. It's cutting out an expensive machine that has expensive maintenance, not just expensive to obtain. Those machines break down way too often, even if you're doing it correctly.
Yep.
So there's maintenance involved. The parts are becoming harder to get and have cost. It takes time to perform the step. It's done fairly blind. So there's a lot of reasons for why a manufacturer wouldn't want to do it. But if they're skipping that step and cutting that corner, boot should cost a lot less money.
Yeah.
And you know what? It doesn't. They charge the same amount. And just, it's snowing people into thinking that it's unnecessary, but it is.
Yeah.
It's snowed.
And let's quantify that just a little bit, because to help everybody understand, like, why is it saving them so much money? Because the step of pulling the last out to do it has curing and extra steps before it that have to 100% be done before you pull that last out so your boot doesn't fall apart. You can skip all of that and literally move straight to bottoming and save yourself 4 days of extra steps and curing time by taking that out. It is a manufacturing workaround. Like, that 4 days means that 24 pairs of boots go out 4 days sooner, which means 24 pairs of boots get started sooner. You compound that over the course of the month, and over that alone, you've probably increased your output 30%, maybe even 40%. And you don't need all the storage space to store all these boots that are curing, waiting for that glue to be done to pull the last out. We don't talk about it very often. You can also destroy a boot pulling the last out. It does happen every so often that you'll destroy a backstay stitch pulling the last out. It does happen. Those plates, kind of separate. They get beat up over time. They curl and flange out a little bit more instead of staying tight to the last. It just drags right up the back, splits a couple stitches. Bam. Them uppers is destined for the trash. So.
I think that covers it. If you still want to buy your work boots, somebody who is deciding to skip that step, then tell them you need a discount.
Yeah.
If they're not doing the step, you don't need to be paying for the step. Those boots should cost a little bit less than they do. Absolutely. A little bit less than the guy who is taking the time.
Yep.
Put that in there.
100%. You sure don't want to beat that dead horse a little bit more?
No, I think it did.
Sorry, I was referencing
that horse.
The horse rump joke we made earlier.
Yes, horse was a specific subject beforehand, beforehand.
So, but those are well, I had 5 written down, but technically from the on the fly one, those are 6 boot myths. There's more boot myths than this. This episode was really targeting the egregious stuff, which is, the Goodyear welt's the gold standard that no one could ever beat. How somehow Blake Rapid has been shit on. It's still mind-boggling, but plenty of people who believe it. You know, the more controversial ones that like not all cemented boots should be thrown in the trash can or burned at the stake or just, you know, Thanos snapped out of existence. They do have their place. I don't think the chrome tan and veg tan ones were major shockers for any regular listeners of the channel, but for someone who randomly just found this video, you probably learned something. You know.
Yes, there's more. They'll either build up and be an additional video one day when we've put a whole bunch of them together, or had a whole bunch of people ask questions about myths that.
Yeah.
We are taking notes.
Yep. Comments down below.
But yeah, there's certainly more. I mean, I've got two of them in my head as I sit here, so there's certainly more. But this seemed like a good amount of egregious ones.
These are pretty common ones right now. These are probably questions that are answered in forums across Reddit, Facebook, Discord, whatever. Probably at least weekly. Most of this stuff would probably falls into the weekly category. So, like, comment, subscribe. Questions down below. Please boot myths down below. We would, yeah. If you got anything here, even if it's ones we don't know, we can go look this stuff up, and we do have access to a ton of bootmakers that can help with getting us either in the right direction, sources, answering directly on the record, whatever. Like down below, we can make that happen. That's not a huge deal from that perspective. You might not, you know, get it in the month of January, February, March, but 25, we could have it for you. If you have boot collections, we have time of recording this, one or two more in the pipe. I can't remember. But
really? I don't think there's any in the pipe right now. Oh,
no.
There's one more coming.
Yeah,
there's one more that hasn't aired yet, but we don't have any that we haven't recorded yet.
Yeah, there's no more left to record. So, and I think maybe the one just came out at the day or after the day of recording this. But if you want more boot collections, down below, we'll have you give them to us in a little bit more organized method than we've done in the past. We've kind of put it together. The last couple collections kind of beat us in submission with like boot collections bigger than 15 or 20. That's like, okay, better organization method, but we'll work that out with you, get that done. But if you want to see more boot collections, we need more boot collections. If you have any buddy that maybe has a YouTube video they've already made with their boot collection, that's someone you know that we can get a hold of and go over their video and they're okay with us using it, we could do that too. Just, you know, down below, let us know. We'll work out some of those details. I've thought about maybe asking Dale to come on and talk about his boot collection, but we'd need like 27-part episode for that one. But you know, we can get, you know, some on. Like if it's someone that's more familiar with being on camera, it's obviously a little easier and it can be a video like Tony's. But you know, like I said, suggestions if you want to see I don't know, a particular maker that you know, or someone that you would like us to interview, we can ask some people, see what happens. We've got a couple interviews coming down the pipe in the coming months. We'll see kind of what happens. Those are a little bit harder to schedule. We've got a couple that are thinking about it. We've got a couple that are planned. You know, we'll see what happens. So,
till next time.
Yep. Like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next one.
Plancha.